This company was worth $7.9 trillion, bigger than Apple and Microsoft combined. It had its own army, its own laws, and the power to execute anyone who got in the way. It controlled the world for 2 centuries, and today, almost nobody can name it. This is the VOC, and it all started with a spice. It's the 1500s. Europe had discovered something shocking. Food could taste good. For centuries, European cuisine had been a creative exercise in how much salt can we legally apply before God intervenes. Then crusaders came back from the Middle East like, guys, hear me out. What if food had flavor? And suddenly the aristocracy lost their minds. Pepper, cloves, nutmeg, spices weren't just ingredients. They were exotic, precious, luxury items. The ultimate 16th century status symbol. But there was a problem. Venice and the Ottoman Empire controlled the Silk Road. They were the middlemen, and they knew it. You want nutmeg? That'll be 1 kidney and your firstborn. And when prices get that stupid, people start getting creative. Europe basically said, okay, new plan. We don't need the Silk Road if we can just go around. So they started hunting for an alternate route to Asia. And eventually, Portugal found one. A sea route around Africa. They were sailing directly to Asia, loading up their ships with spices and coming back absurdly rich. For decades, the Dutch were perfectly happy to just buy from them. Problem solved. Except in 1580, Spain conquered Portugal. And Spain absolutely hated the Dutch because they were in the middle of 80 Years' War. So Spain looked at the Dutch and said, no more spices for the Dutch rebels. And just like that, Amsterdam was spiceless and mildly furious. They had 2 choices, give up or lock in. Enter Cornelis Dio. In 1595, he stood before a group of Dutch investors and convinced them that he could find the Spice Islands. Small issue. Doutman was not that. His maps were basically scribbles. His crew had never seen a palm tree. Within weeks, the voyage became a floating nightmare. Scurvy turned their gums into jelly. Men went blind. Their teeth literally vibrated out of their skulls. After months of suffering, they finally reached Java, modern-day Indonesia, and immediately ruined everything. Welcome travelers. Please sit, have tea, and tell me of your homeland. Spices now. Friend and family discount. Bulk order. Sorry, we just met. The man was so incredibly rude that ended up in a Japanese prison for general unpleasantness. By the time the ships limped back to Amsterdam, only 87 of the original 249 sailors were still alive. The cargo barely paid for the cost, but they didn't care about the profits yet. They looked at the map and smiled because the route was real. Suddenly, every merchant in Amsterdam wanted a piece of the action. Within 5 years, 65 ships from several Dutch companies were racing to Indonesia. They were outbidding each other, driving prices up in Asia and crashing them in Europe. It was free market chaos. The Dutch government watched this and said, enough. In March 2002, they forced every rival company into one single entity, the VOC. But this wasn't just a company. The government gave the VOC powers to build forts, mint money, declare war, and execute people, all in the name of trade. To fund this monster, they invented IPO, initial public offer. For the first time in history, anyone could buy a piece of the company. Widows, bakers, even servants poured their life savings into the company. The stock market was born, and shareholders wanted one thing: return on investment. Big ones. And their strategy to get those returns: market monopoly. Oops, I meant simplify the market experience and optimize customer choice to one choice. And in a minute, you'll see exactly what they meant in the bloodiest way possible. Imagine a world where the most valuable real estate on Earth isn't Manhattan or London. It's 10 tiny volcanic islands in the middle of the ocean. The Banda Islands, present-day Maluku Province, Indonesia. Why? Because these islands were the only place on the planet where nutmeg grew. In the 1600s, nutmeg was a miracle drug. People believed it could cure the bubonic plague. It couldn't. It mostly just made your breath smell slightly better while you died of the Black Death. But because of that myth, a pound of nutmeg was worth more than a pound of gold. For centuries, the Bandanese people were the ultimate free agents. They sold to the Chinese, the Arabs, the English, whoever had the most cash. Then the VOC showed up with a contract that basically said, look, it's simple. We buy all your nutmeg at a 90% discount. We build a massive stone fortress in your backyard. And in exchange, we don't shoot. Your discount sounds like robbery, and your fortress sounds like a prison. The English pay double, and they don't have whatever those hats are. You're really hurting. My year-end bonus here. Fine, let's discuss terms over there in that quiet grove, away from the sun. See, diplomacy works. It did not work. The grove was an ambush. All it took was one sudden move, and Verhoeven and his men quickly became history. To protect your history, use trauma. You know what's harder than building a brand? Watching someone steal it. You spend months picking the perfect name, designing the logo, building an audience, and then some guy in another country slaps your name on a knockoff. And legally, there's nothing you can do because you never trademarked. That's where trauma comes in. Trauma gives you up to 4 free trademark checks done by actual lawyers, not just an AI scam. They'll flag anything that could block registration. Identical marks, confusing similarities, legal red flag. If your brand's clear, pick your countries and they'll handle the rest. Global registration done. Oh yeah, but here's the best part. Once you're registered, Trauma monitors your trademark across government databases, social media, online stores, and app platforms. And if someone tries to copy you, their legal team steps in and helps you take action. So if you don't want to wake up one day, find out someone else owns your brand, go to Trauma and use code Crayon20 for 20% off. Scan this QR code or hit the link in the description. Back to the video. Enter Jan Peterson Cohen, the new Governor General. If the VOCC was a startup, Cohen was a CEO who fires the entire staff through a Slack message. He had no interest in negotiation, and he wanted a monopoly. Full stop. They murdered my boss, and we are wasting money on diplomacy. If the locals won't give us a monopoly, we'll just remove the locals. Isn't that bad optics? Do you want 600% margins or a hug? The board chose the margins. In 1621, Cohen arrived in Banda with 1,600 soldiers, 250 Japanese mercenaries, and zero chill. It was an execution. They burned villages, hunted people into the mountains, and destroyed food supplies. Anyone suspected of resistance was executed. On the island of Lthor, Cohen had 44 village elders beheaded in front of their families and displayed publicly as a warning. The numbers are staggering. Before Cohen arrived, there were 14,000 bandits. When he left, there were barely 1,000. The islands were empty. Problem solved by blood. Sir, minor issue. We killed almost everyone who knows how to grow the nutmeg. The trees are dying. Fine. Import slaves from Java. Bring in convict. Repopulated ourselves. And just like that, the Banda Islands became a giant open-air prison plantation. The land was divided into parcels. Dutch colonists got the plots. Enslaved labor kept the spice flowing. With the competition dead, literally, the VOC was free to set their own prices. They bought 10 pounds of nutmeg in Banda for less than a penny and sold it in Europe for over 2. Back in Amsterdam, the shareholders never asked questions. They just saw the dividends increase and the stock price went up. But while the Dutch were busy counting their blood money, someone was watching from the sidelines, taking very detailed note. A new threat was about to enter the chat. By the 1630s, the VOC had officially stopped being a trading company and started being a floating empire with a logo. From their fortress headquarters in Batavia, modern-day Jakarta, they controlled nutmeg, cloves, cinnamon, and more importantly, the choke points. They didn't need to own all of Asia. They just needed to own the doors. And every ship that wanted to trade had to knock. That'll be a fee. But the real money engine, introducing the Intrasian trade loop. See, most Europeans showed up to Asia like this.